that says take notes with Gemini. I did not check that box, but it was pre-checked for me. I have unchecked it. So we are not taking Gemini notes in today's session, but we are recording. And there should be transcripts that come along with that as well. Just limiting a little bit how much AI goes into my presentations. Yeah, just a little bit about me. I am the ed tech at La Paz Middle School, like I said before. I teach applied technology. It's called career technology at some of the middle schools. It's also called exploratory at some of the middle schools. It's a bit of a mess, but I teach career skills and technical skills to middle school students. It's a lot of fun. I love video games. I run the esports program at La Paz. We've just finished our Mario Kart tournament. We're going to be doing Smash Bros in the spring. I love fancy pens as well, and I love spreadsheets. I believe my philosophy towards technology is that the reason that we have it at our schools is because it helps us speed up our thinking processes. It helps us speed up how quickly we can look at something like data so that we have more time to be better teachers or better administrators, better counselors, better whatever it is that we're doing. It just helps us make our decisions faster. So that's, with that in mind, that's how I designed this presentation to be useful to you guys. See, I'm just gonna make sure that we've got, okay, here we go. So just kind of a caveat before we get started. Spreadsheets, again, like I said, is a deep subject. There's some basic things about spreadsheets that we're not going over today because we will run out of time. We're not going to talk about formatting spreadsheets, changing text size, alternating colors, sharing and giving view only or edit access. Those are the things that I kind of showed off in the slam, just because we weren't going to talk about them today. If you need some help with that kind of thing, you can always ask during the sandbox session later today. I can go over some of those basic things. However, there's also some resources linked on this slides. These were trainings that I have done, so these were made by me. Some of them do also include templates like we're going to talk about today. They will tell you some of the other things about spreadsheets that you could use, especially just trying to make your data look nice and pretty. You'll see stuff that's already formatted here when we're looking at spreadsheets today, because that's kind of the basics, and we're not going over that particular type of basics today, so that we have time to get into the functions. So, what is a spreadsheet function? By the way, I talk fast when I'm getting excited. So if I get too excited and I talk too fast, please let me know in the chat. I can slow down. I can redo something. I can go over something again. This is your session, so I want to make sure that I'm doing what you would like to see. A function is an expression, like a sentence written in the language of spreadsheets, entered into a cell or the box in a spreadsheet that calculates, imports, or modifies the range, which means the number of cells that it's talking to, of data. So here's an example, a very simple one. This is a sum function in the little yellow box, and it's summing the range, and the range is what's in these parentheses. A1 is going to be this number 2 right here, A2 and A3. So this goes from A1 to A3. And there's a colon between A1 and A3. And if I'm summing from A1 to A3, I get 2 plus 4 plus 5, which equals 11. So that's one of the more simple things to just kind of explain what it is. Okay, here's some vocabulary. You might refer back to this as you're going through some of the activities today. You can also just follow along and copy what I'm doing, and then come back and look at this later. So the word range is going to refer to the set of cells or the boxes in the spreadsheet where you want your function to work. So you're going to define, where are we doing this? Where are we summing? Where are we averaging? Where are we doing all this stuff? And it looks like, in parentheses, you can see A2 to J25. If you imagine it's like a document where you're reading from left to right, all the way from the top. The first word you read is the first cell you would put in. The last word you read is the last cell you would put in. And the formula will pick up everything in between. And we'll look at that again in person in a few minutes. Criterion is another one. Criterion just means like the conditions for my formula. So you wouldn't use that in a sum function. You would use it in some of the other ones like the COUNTIF functions or the filter functions or some of the more advanced ones. You give the spreadsheet, the formula rules to follow so that it follows and gives you only the data that you want. That's what a criterion is going to be from. We will, at one time, we will use the word index and we will use the word search key. But those are basic ones we're going to go over if we get to the more advanced stuff. Index just means they change the columns from alphabetized A, B, C, D, like you see on a normal spreadsheet, to 1, 2, 3, 4 based on your range. It's really annoying that they do that, but it'll be easy to follow through. There's lots of help, and there's automatically Google Spreadsheets automatically pops up with help when you're trying to do a formula. So I'll show you how that works so you don't have to guess what you're trying to do. And then the search key is, of course, the thing that you're looking for. If you're looking for a specific data point or a specific entry, then you might use that term search key. It's not as often that you would use it. So those are some vocabulary that I'd like you to be aware of. And then all formulas kind of follow this general format. We always start with the equal sign, and then the name of the function. And then you're going to probably put the range and some criteria. Anytime you see a format for a spreadsheet and there's something in those square brackets, it's optional. I don't have to add that, but if I need to clarify something, I might put it in there. So you'll see a few things like that as well. This is just a handy visual for you to come back to when you're thinking about how am I going to write a formula. It generally tends to look like this. Okay, here's an example of a spreadsheet, and we can look at this one. This is a fundraising document for my esports club. This was back in the days of the Nintendo Switch 1, which is still dominating the esports clubs around the district, by the way. But what I did was I put my equipment that I needed, I put the price, and then, for example, I have a sum function happening over here in column D, and you can look at this with me too. I'm gonna make it a little bit larger so you can see. Product. So we've got the multiplication that's going on here. Every time I change this number, it's going to automatically multiply. So if I say, actually, we need 3 Nintendo Pro controllers, it's going to change the amount over on column D, because this is the price, this is how many we're getting, so this is how much it costs. And then I think, oh yeah, this one also, this one also is going to calculate tax automatically and add the totals. So this way I can really get a clear picture of what I need, and I can show it to my students as well. So it helps us talk about things like, hey, what are we going to do with the money that we fundraised this year? We're going to get this, this, and this. Well, here's how much it costs. Here's how much we have, that sort of thing. So this is a really simple example that whenever I'm trying to add something together, you'll notice if I click where it says total to fundraise, in the corner here, it doesn't actually have a number. It has the formula, sum F9 and F11. So if I look at F9, F9 is the total amount, which is everything from this column in column D. And then the tax is a multiply function, and it's by 0.075, which is approximately the sales tax in California. So it's 7.5%. I think that number has gone up recently. I'll have to look at that. But that's the basic idea behind some of the things you can do with spreadsheets. And we're actually going to start with those types, the kind of math-based functions, which are a little bit easier to learn, in my opinion. And we're also going to look at some importing functions. We may skip the time functions. They're not as relevant. If we need extra time, I want to make sure I honor your break as well. We'll go into if or ifs. What's the difference between if and ifs with an S on the end? And then I have some weird ones, which I love, but again, might not be as relevant to you. We might skip that one or save it for the sandbox time if someone really, really wants to see how that works. If you're an intervention specialist or a counselor, the weird ones come up a lot. I can show you more about that when we get there if we have the time. So let's get into it. Math functions. So you can see all these ones on the side. There are more, but these are the ones I thought most relevant to teaching and managing student data. Sum, product, divide, minus, average, convert. A lot of these are going to be really easy to understand what it's supposed to be just by the name. And also, most of the time, you don't need to add any criterion. You just need your range, and it needs to be a number. So, because you can't obviously find the average of the word photosynthesis, because that doesn't make sense. So you will need to have these be numbers, but you can do things like add, subtract, divide, find the average, find the max, the min, the mode, find the percentile, all of those things. Let's play with this right now. So on slide 12, there's a template, and I'm going to say about 7 minutes for playing around with it. I'm going to show off what I can do. I want you to go to where it's relevant for you. So if my first challenge that I'm looking at, the most simple one, isn't relevant for you, let's skip to the tabs at the bottom. We've got sum, average, multiply, and convert. Feel free to work with whatever tab you want. There's an explanation at the top. And then you have a mission and a bonus challenge. So for the mission and the bonus challenge, you're going to try and complete this using the format. So the format is written right here. And you'll be able to create your output with this. So we've got some student names over here. Obviously, these are fictional characters. ID numbers, class periods, status, EL, EO, SWD, some of the stuff that we use in our district a lot. These students have been tracking the amount of time that they've been studying each day of the week, and then their total score on a test. So for each student, this is the first mission. I'm going to do this, and please feel free to follow along with me or skip ahead to a different tab if you prefer to study those. Sum the total number of minutes they spent studying for that week. Okay, so we'll do that one first. So starting over here, this student 000007, we've got study time on Monday is 15 minutes, 18 minutes, 22 minutes, 35 minutes, 12 minutes. Okay, so I want the total amount of time. That's going to be a sum formula. The way that I do this is I go over to K4 where I want this to exist, and I write equals sum. The cool thing about this is there's an automatic pop-up. Right here it tells me, do you want to sum F4 to J4? Let me have a look. Over here, F4 starts on Monday, 18, 22, 35, 12, to J4. And you can see it's highlighted in orange. That is exactly what I want to do. If it wasn't what I wanted to do, I can just click sum. And again, it wants to tell me which one, they think they know which one I want, and they're right. So I could just click this and it'll automatically work. But I want to show you some of the other stuff that happens here. You get this pop-up. It says sum, value 1, value 2. I could write a number, or I could write the cell in the spreadsheet where the number is, and it can do both. If you click this down button, it'll actually tell you some examples, like an example of the formula. So if you're trying to learn how to do something, you actually get an example here, an explanation. And if you click Learn More, you'll go to the Google Sheets documentation, which is a big, long, crazy website that tells you how to do everything with spreadsheets. It's useful, but for most of the stuff you need to do, I think this pop-up box does a lot for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I'm just go ahead and click that. And when I clicked it, I got the formula in the box here. And we've got the number 102 minutes. All right. So one cool thing that I can do is, you see this little blue dot in the corner. When you click on the cell, and any cell you click on, there's a little blue dot in the corner. I can take this and I can drag it down. Whoops, to the, I'm supposed to go to the bottom. Early reveal. Drag it down to the bottom, and I get an auto load of those formulas. Now look what happens when I click on row 5, excuse me. It says sum F5 to J5. So it actually goes and changes the number vertically down. And you can check this if you want to do the math. It's all correct. And it changes, and the formula changes to match the number across. So it's guessing what we want, and it's actually totally correct in this case. So let's see what we have left. We've got about 2.5 minutes. Hopefully you found this template okay and you're trying something out. Are there any preferences? I can do the bonus challenge, or I can go to a different tab if anybody wants me to demonstrate one of those formulas. Let me know in the chat or by unmuting yourself. Otherwise, in about 2.5 minutes, we'll move on to the next type of spreadsheet. Okay, and if you're embroiled in the bonus challenge, if you know what the correct formula is for the total time spent studying by the whole class, I'll give you a hint. You'll probably want to put that in K16, so underneath the first blank row. If you know that formula, put it in the chat. What's the formula? Okay, 679. Is it really? That's a big number this year. What's the formula? Equals sum K2 to K15 is correct. All right, cool. So we got that down. This is great. It's very simple, but it's figuring out that format that a formula needs to go into. That is what I would put there. And as a matter of fact, if I even start writing equals sum K2 to K15 shows up right away, and we get that number 679. So there you go. All right, let's see. Okay, that's our time for this one. If you want to do more, come back to this during this sandbox session, or we could do some other things. So how would I use this? Well, if you have your department money and you got to account for every dollar and cent, this is a great thing, especially if you're a PLT lead. You can set this up for all of your people so that they can track their expenditures. Plans for fundraising for my club, like I showed you, or other things that you need to fundraise for. Adjunct duty calculations. I put together a massive spreadsheet for one of our vice principals every year that automatically calculates adjunct duty for him. He appreciates it a lot. Finding trends in students' responses, things that they're saying in the classroom. Apps like Formative can do this automatically. And the reason they can do this is, like I mentioned before, Formative is a fancy spreadsheet, just like all the other apps we use. It collects the data, it can sum, it can filter, it can do all of those things. But students actually love finding out data about themselves. I share it with my students, and it's something they look forward to. Believe it or not, it's not just the nerd people. It's every student likes to learn about their own stats. Yeah, and you can give these to students as well. They can calculate their AR reading time. They can calculate their study time. Make it your bell work. Let them start focusing on their data journey as well. If there are any other thoughts where you could use formulas like this, please put them in the chat. We're going to go on to another style of function. This is an import function. So an import function takes data and moves it to another location. So it finds data in the spreadsheet and moves it somewhere else. If there's any people that work directly with intervention specialists or intervention specialists in the rooms, you probably know VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP was big hype when we started doing PDSA cycles a couple of years ago. Finding that specific information or the students in that specific subgroup, whatnot. I got to tell you something. VLOOKUP is old news compared to XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP is the one you want to use. As a matter of fact, we'll look at both of them. But XLOOKUP is like VLOOKUP 2.0. If you see your intervention specialist on campus next week, tell them, hey, I heard that XLOOKUP is better than VLOOKUP. And they'll get real mad at you. And then maybe a week later, they'll come back and be like, yeah, it is. Because I've looked into it and there's all kinds of cool stuff. I got an article linked on this slide. It's slide 14. About the difference between XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. There's some really cool things that you can use that for. There's also the filter function. I love the filter function because XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP can only take part they can only find one match for what you search for. You'll be looking for one thing and it'll bring you the thing that's closest to that. However, a filter formula can actually take everything that matches and put it all in one place. So I love using filter formulas for that reason. Let's take 7 minutes. Let's look at a template together. And let's try a couple of these functions. So this is a long explanation for VLOOKUP. I actually want to go over to XLOOKUP. You can check out VLOOKUP if you want. So the format here is here's where it gets a little bit complicated, all right? This is where we use the term search key. So like, what are we looking for? And then lookup range and result range. So for example, if I'm looking for a person's name, I can import something else like their ID number. So the lookup range is where am I finding the search key? And the result range is if I go across that row where the search key is found, what number am I importing? What result am I importing? So I can result something different. And then you can also tell what happens if there's a missing value. Like if something doesn't actually exist in your set, you can set a custom message, which is really cool. All right, so we are going to make a formula that will automatically import study time for Hank McCoy over here, who's in column 9. But again, imagine this is a larger data set. Imagine this is 150 students. And you want to be able to quickly look up something that you've got on there for them, because students always want to ask you, where's my information? And like, I don't have time to look it up. Well, with this formula, you actually can. So we're gonna do an XLOOKUP right here. Let's label it first, actually. Study times 4, and then whoops, study times 4, and then here we're going to get started with our XLOOKUP. Actually, we're going to get started over here because here I'm going to put the person's name. So over here, I'm going to write equals XLOOKUP. All right, here we go. Now, the search key is going to be whatever text I put in C17. So I'm going to write C17. Right now, there's nothing in C17, but we're going to put something later. all right, comma, lookup range. So we're going to be looking in column A. That's where all the names are. And column A, we're going to skip where it says student name because we're never going to use that one. We're going to go A4 to A15. So A4 colon A15. Okay, and you can see it's highlighted. Comma, result range. What do I want to import? I want to import his study time for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's going to be C4. C4. C4 means starting from the first column that it could possibly be, all the way down to what column is Friday study time? G15. Okay, so it's going to be C4 colon G15. Now, once again, I'm going to press comma. It's going to switch to the next one. If there's a missing value, I'm just going to write, who is this? And I'm going to put it in parentheses. Parentheses are important when you do text that has spaces in it. Whenever there's a space, every space, spreadsheets assume it's a new thing you're entering. So putting the whole thing in parentheses gives me the ability to write text like that. All right. And then it says match mode and search mode, but they're in brackets, those square brackets. So I don't actually need to include something. I can still get the formula from that. So I'm going to go ahead and close those parentheses. And right now, it gets who is this because I didn't put a name, right? Oh, I should have who is this with a question mark. Let me add that in there. There we go. Sorry to all the English teachers in the chat. So now we're going to go ahead and put Hank McCoy in this box right here. H-A-N-K space M-C C-O-Y. And when I press enter, ta-da, there's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday study times. Now I noticed the column is one off because I put it underneath the column where it starts from the column after the formula, and I put the name underneath column C. So if I want to fix that, I'm going to actually cut and paste. But when I do that, what's going to happen is I'm going to cut and paste the formula over here. It's going to make a mistake. Wait, is it? Oh, no, it's not. It noticed that I copy and pasted and it changed the numbers. It didn't used to do that. You used to have to figure out what went wrong. But this is actually perfect. So Hank McCoy, great. And if I were to search for somebody else, like, for example, Mr. Justin Bieber, who is this? It doesn't have him in there. Okay, but I could search for somebody else who's in the group right here, like Mr. Bobby Drake. Press enter. Okay, and there's the study times. It would probably be helpful to label this top row right here if you wanted to make it something that you could continue to use. But this could continue to be something that you have available to look up data quickly and change what you're looking up or who you're looking it up for. The cool thing about this versus VLOOKUP, an XLOOKUP can look for information on the other side of your column one, and a VLOOKUP can't do that. There's a better explanation in the article linked, but I wanted to keep that kind of simple. And that used up all of our time here for this section. But of course, this session is for you. If there's any questions about this right now, please let me know. Or if you want me to demonstrate one of the bonus challenges or one of the other tabs, I can pause what we're doing right now and do that for you. Is there any questions that I can answer at this time? Oops, wrong slideshow. Okay. If we're all good to move forward, The question is, how do we use this? Okay, so this is, like I say, finding data that we need quickly. You can make a custom search box in a spreadsheet where you're trying to look things up. I'm a big believer in making spreadsheets that last for longer than one assignment, like for the entire year or for the entire semester or entire quarter. Those of you who use Google Forms for quizzes and things, did you know that you can link your Google form to an existing spreadsheet? So you could actually send, like if you have a bell work that you're trying to keep track of how it's working, you can send all of the Google Forms to post a new sheet in each Google, in the same Google spreadsheet. And then you can have your own tab where you have a custom data profile, or what's the word I'm looking for? Dashboard, like your own little data dashboard where you can see what students have gotten over the year. You can look at it by subgroup. You can look at it by grade. You can look at it by what other information you have already in that spreadsheet for them. So that's a lot of useful things. I'm not going to talk about my favorite spreadsheet merger because that I almost never get to talk about, because I think we will run short on time. So I can bring that up again in the sandbox session if anyone's interested. I love this spreadsheet. All right, we are going to skip the time functions. They're pretty cool, and there is a template for them, but I think they'll be less relevant than the one that I want to focus on before we get to our break and then the sandbox time. I know time goes so quickly. I could teach this for hours. Probably you're very grateful that I'm not allowed to do that. Yeah, you can use time functions to calculate the amount of days between two events that you need to be focused on. You can use them for sign-in sheets for clubs. You can use time calculators for students. You can create things that they can use for their own long-term projects. Really, really useful to check in. So what we're going to talk about if and ifs functions, and this is where we're probably going to round off before we get into break and then sandbox time, where you can ask me all of your questions. I'm looking forward to answering them and showing off what we're doing. So you can add criteria to your functions that removes data that's not relevant and gives you everything that is relevant. Count and sum and average are what you do with it. But let's say, for example, I wanted to count study time within that spreadsheet we were looking at before. I want to count study time of just the students who got a really good grade on my test. So I could show everyone, hey, if you want to succeed in this class, this is the amount of time you should probably put in. Then I would need a count if function, because we need to be able to count only based on the high grade items. But if you add an S to the end, you can add multiple criteria. What about the high grade items of the students who are ELs? If I need to know for my own purposes, well, how much study time should I be asking them to do based on who's being successful? This is where it gets really interesting. And again, there's more versions of this. If you go into the documentation, which is linked at the end of this slideshow, you can find everything. That's a bit overwhelming. These are the ones I think you'll probably be using the most. So once again, this is going to lead us right about up to our break time. I'm going to take a quick 7 minutes to go over one of these for you. And let's do a count if. So the difference between count if and sum if, for example, if I was looking for a count if, I might do something like over here, we've got the total score. If I was going to count if, I would get the number of students who got a certain score. So like if I were to say count if it was higher than 50%, I would get these numbers, the number of students who scored higher than 50%. If I were to use a sum if in this column, that would make no sense because it would give me the scores combined. I could use an average if with scores, because an average of the score is useful information. But I would use a sum if I was trying to sum the total amount of time spent studying, or an average if I was trying to average the time spent studying under certain criteria. So That might be a little bit confusing, but it's less confusing when you start to play with it. So please go to the tab that you really want to use and learn from that. So this is my mission. I want to know how many students scored higher than 70% on the quiz. Keep in mind the quiz is column L. And so we want students that scored higher than 70%. Let me do my count if function. Equals count if, and it's already asking me, okay, do you want count if? This time it didn't autocomplete because it has no idea what I want to count if. And it would make sense because the criteria, I haven't defined it yet. So we need the range. The range is column L from L4, and I can even click L4 to L15. All right, so we'll start at L4 colon L15. Okay, highlighted, great, comma. So far it's 0 because I haven't given my criteria yet. So my criterion is, we're going to use some math symbols, higher than 50. Okay, so higher than 50%. So that's going to be 70% and up for what I've got now. And we should be good. Oh, wait, it gave me an error. Oh, you know what? I just broke my own rule. For these numbers, you got to put them in parentheses. Yep, all right, that did it. So because there's two symbols next to each other, we need to put in parentheses, and you could also put a space between them and it'll still work if you want to make it like grammatically correct. And then here we go. And it's giving me a suggested autofill, but I don't want to use that because I don't trust it. So that's the number of students that scored higher than a 70. And I can confirm because it's a small amount of data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is correct. All right. What if I want to just know the EOs that scored lower than 50%. I'm not considering the ELs. I'm just considering the EOs. Well, that's a count ifs formula. So let me try that one. Equals count if, add an S on the end, and open parentheses. Okay, the criteria range is going to be the same as before, L4 to L15. So L4 colon L15. Okay. The criteria is said lower than 50%, right? Okay, it's going to be less than 50 colon. Okay, and that's going to give me everyone that scored less than 50%. And then comma, I need a criterion range 2. Now this time they're telling me where do I look for the second thing you're going to test. In this case, it's whether they're an EL or an EO. So it's going to be D4 to D15. So D4 colon D15. And now what am I testing? I'm testing if it contains the text EO. So parentheses again. EO, make sure that your it's case sensitive, it's grammar sensitive. If there's a comma and a space, it needs to be exactly a match. And then close parentheses. So I'm still getting the number 3, but let's check and make sure. So the 3 that scored lower than 50% are all 3, 1, 2, 3 EOs. Okay, so if I were to take this formula and modify it to say EL, I would get the number 0 because none of the students that scored lower than 50% were ELs. All right, and I could keep this here as more numbers and more scores get added onto this. I could make one change that would make this go on forever and continue to calculate this no matter what. Instead of L4 to L15, I would take away the number L4 to L, which means that it would go, and you can see that it's highlighting, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom of the row. And the same thing for here, D15 to D, and it's going to calculate all the way to the bottom of the row. So if I add more students onto this later, or if I were to add multiple scores, multiple quizzes later, then it would continue to work and continue to make those calculations. So, and the numbers are still the same. They haven't changed because I haven't added anything extra, right? However, if I added a new student, that student was on EL, and let's say they got a 15% on the quiz, notice that this number over here changed. It's a 1 now because there's one EL who got 15% on the quiz. And as I erase these numbers, it goes back to 0. So you can make these calculators, and you could, what I would probably do is I would probably add another column over here and have the calculator off to the side so that the numbers don't get in the way of what I'm trying to calculate. If I wanted to have, so I could continue. All right, perfect timing. It is 10:45. If I'll take a quick minute if there are any questions about what I've shared so far. And if none, once again, you can kind of see how this connects to our teaching practices, our student data practices. I think what we probably want to do right now, just to make sure that we're all good for the next 45 minutes, or I'm sorry, for the next 15 minutes and then a 45-minute sandbox session, is let's open it up for a break. I'll stay here if you want to talk a little bit, but you can also come back during the sandbox session. I did want to talk about weird ones, but we'll get to that at another time. If you're not coming back for the sandbox session, but you'd like to give a feedback, I will send the link right now. Is there anyone that's not going to be able to come back? Let me know in the chat. And I will put the feedback link in the chat here. Otherwise, you can feel free to leave and join, or you can leave yourself in the session, step away from your screen for a little bit. We're going to be joining back in at 11 o'clock. All right, and like I said, I'll stay here if anyone has questions or needs to let me know something.